Alright, I've been looking through a lot of old magazines and publications dedicated to the art of rubber stamping in the past couple days. I don't know, maybe it's the last day. Seems like 2 days, 3 days. But it kind of got me thinking it might be fun to kind of do a retro, at least in terms of technique, scene, using the stamps that I had and what the ways that I was using them back in the mid 90s to kind of late 90s. And that was with, I still use them today. My wood mounted rubber stamps. I use a lot of unmounted these days too, but the thing that would really change is my media here. And that was, we only used Marvy brush markers. I mean, there was other types of markers being used back in the day, in the 80s and, early 90s, raised raised dye ink pads, okay? But pretty much everyone had some of the Marvy pens. Some of them, people used a lot of Le Plumes and Tombos, the double-sided markers, but these brush markers had the big, wide tips, okay? Now, I don't have a lot of these left, but I have a few, and I haven't used a lot of these, so I don't even know if they're completely dry or not, so I don't know if this is going to work. But there's a couple things that I did back in the day, okay? Let's see, should I stamp this first? Let's stamp this second. I'll show you what I used to do with the Tonal Applicator stamp. Alright, so back then we didn't have all these different types of applicators like, I don't know, the stylus tools and different little spongy techniques and all these little, I don't know, some people have these little fingertip things, gadgets with little sponge tips on it, and all kinds of things like that. I mean, we have paper towels back then, and I'm using that a lot these days, so that's kind of going back in terms of, the different types of usage that we did. But let me show you what I was doing with this tonal applicator, okay? Now, a lot of my designs have a lot of tone in them, okay? They're tonal as opposed to linear. I mean, this one right here is kind of solid, line work in terms of thicks and thins, and there's some solid types of things like that. But for the most part, my images, there's a lot of volume in them, okay? Describing the forms, or is something rounded, is it three-dimensional? And most things are. So the theory behind the tonal applicator, which is this little pear-shaped field of dots, is that if the dot is the building block to tonal designs, I came up with this to fill in additional tone and to blend different types of imagery together. All right? So I used to have a stamp at a Stamp with a Hand company, the previous company that I worked for, that was called Field of Sky, and it was kind of this more kind of amorphic type of dot pattern. But I had a lot of things kind of dispersing, but I found that the dots on the perimeter, if they weren't supported by a tightly, clustered grouping of dots, those dots on the outside, when they pressed rubber, got bigger. So it wasn't a uniform dot pattern, so there was these huge dots and smaller dots. And if you have smaller dots on the outside too, they tend to squash down more when you're making the impression. So, you had these big dots. So it didn't really match the uniform quality of my stippling work on my designs. All right. So that being said, I also shaped it into a little pear shape so I can get in and out of kind of smaller areas. And that's where that came around. Okay, so let's see this in action here. Let's do some kind of sunsetty type of scheme, color scheme. And like I said, I don't know if these pens are completely, I didn't even check them before this video, so. I used to have people just kind of line up their pens or whatever colors they were going to be using, going from light to dark. I have people do that with their pads too when I was teaching classes. But let's see what we can do here, and let's hope these pens are still a little bit juicy, okay? So we color this up. There was a lot of time spent coloring, okay? But everyone was used to that back in the day. All right? Now I'm going to try to go for this kind of sunsetty pattern. It'll be this kind of inner glow type of thing working in here, okay? So I'll work from the outside and work it in. I haven't used this tonal applicator in years, so kind of go easy on me here if it doesn't come out. Unless this is kind of like riding a bike, okay? So I'm starting on the outside edge and working my way in, okay? It's real similar to what we do with the paper towels, the stylus tools, etc. We start on the outside, and we have a stronger saturation on the perimeter, and as we work in, it gets drier on here, and thus lighter, okay? So you see that kind of gradation like that, okay? I'm not working only like this. I kind of use the side of this like this, okay? And we'll do this around the entire perimeter. Now, if you're working, these Marvy pens are so juicy. That has this gigantic tip right here, okay? You can get quite a bit of coverage here. Now, I don't suppose that my other pens are quite as juicy. In fact, some of them might be very, very dry, okay? But see how I'm kind of turning my paper just like I do with other types of applicators, paper towels, etc. Always do this in a motion that's going to be the most conducive for the application, okay? So if I'm coming from down here, I turn my card and I work it from that angle. All right, so anyways, I felt that this was probably the loudest workshop in the history of rubber stamping, okay? When you get 20 people doing this, the room was very dynamic, or if you're doing a make and take, it was probably the loudest booth in an entire convention hall. Everyone knew where I was, and I'm talking about, from me stamping or from a whole table full of people doing make and takes. It was pretty crazy. All right, now you don't have to tap hard. The thing that I had to kind of get people past was the idea that they're using a stamp. So they're used to making impressions, okay? So the people that use this incorrectly were the ones that, they might have bought it and forgot how to use it, from the demonstrations and so forth, but they might have been making impressions like this. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you get 5 pear shapes on your card, okay? So it's more this type of tapping motion. They have to kind of think of it as, like a sponge or something like that in their hand. All right, so that's with the yellow. Let's go with the orange. If it's working, it looks like it's still pretty juicy. Marvy pens and pads, they really have a lot of ink in them. All right, so here comes the orange in here. Looks like a darker orange. I wonder if I re-inked with a darker version. All right, so I'm not going to go in quite as far as I did with the previous color. So I get this nice gradation of tones like that. Let's show you what this looks like kind of closer up like this. All right. Some people still buy this. A lot of the lessons online are using the tonal applicator, not the video lessons, but the old step-by-step ones, and I'd say, okay, I use the tonal applicator here, but on the tonal applicator I do tell people, well, I'm using mostly other types of applicators these days. This one was pretty effective in what it did, though, okay? But I just don't, this was not an intuitive tool, and I just feel that sponging is a little bit more intuitive in terms of the usage of, whatever type of sponging applicator you happen to use. With this right here, it required a little bit of instruction, and I tried to do, the written instructions. I mean, if I could teach people how to do this, in person, it was no problem, but, people bought this stamp, and they, just went off of the step-by-step instructions without kind of seeing the motion of it. It was kind of, it was confusing for them. And understandably so. You have a rubber stamp here, and they're thinking, impressions like that, so they're not thinking about using it in any way like this at all. Okay. Alright, so we have something like that. Pretty textural, isn't it? Alright, kind of moving along. Let's try the pink here. One of these pens. Okay, this pink one here isn't quite so juicy. Or is it? And let me see, I just used a different portion of it. Looks like it's pretty good. Always go like that. Always tell people kind of take a look and see what they're doing. I don't go in as far as I did with the previous color. This pink almost doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a deeper version of orange, you know, because pink and yellow mix to form orange. This is kind of like a, at least in terms of printing, it's kind of like a primary almost. I know red's the primary color, you know, in colors, you know, red, yellow, and blue, but when it comes to printing, it's more magenta, yellow, cyan, and magenta, right? Yeah. So pink would be kind of more the neutral that you can mix with other colors. Pink and yellow make orange, pink and blue make purple violets. It is kind of weird to use this after all those years, you know. It's kind of, I don't know, is it kind of like getting on a bicycle and, well, you know, you never forget. Alright, this one is really dry, okay? The pen looks real good. The way you re-ink these, though, this is a number 46, and there is a re-inker for it, but Marvy brush markers, you take out this reservoir right here and you just drop down some re-inker fluid. Now, it happens to be a number 46 pad, so there's going to be a 46 re-inker. Okay, so you can put it down there. But if I didn't have a 46 re-inker, there's a lot more pens out there than there are Marvy pads with re-inkers, okay? So if I didn't have something that matched up, I would just drop some pink down this, or I'd drop a different color of red, like the number 2 red. It's a little bit warmer red, but you know, that's better than tossing the pen out. It won't represent, the barrel might not represent the true color of the ink after you mix colors, you know, but I mean, it'd be close enough and you'd get some kind of other version to utilize. So, I don't know. I'm not really worried about, you know, true, like, Pantone colors and whatever, so it wouldn't really matter to me. This is magenta right here. I'm just going to bypass that other red. It was just too dry. Okay, magenta. Magenta was always one of the strongest of the Marvy colors. It's really insane in terms of the saturation like that. Look at that. My magenta pens and my pads were always super juicy too because I didn't use this color too much. I really like it, but I didn't really use it so much. So my pads were always like super juicy, and almost, I rarely ever have to re-ink that color. Alright, looks pretty good. It's getting kind of textured in there too. Okay. You always kind of ink up on its side. It does kind of fray, like this old pen right here is getting a little frayed on this, tonal applicator here. It is probably a 25-year-old pen, though, at least. That probably saw, a lot of usage back in the day. Alright, see that kind of coming around? Now, I didn't do all scenes like that. I mean, this just happens to be more of like a sunset-y color, kind of, glowing type of thing. Not every scene got this way. I don't know. I was looking through the pens that I had and what colors that I could potentially do, and thought, I had a pretty full kind of spectrum of a kind of a sunset-y type of scheme. Alright, this is purple right here, or violet. It's a lot of inking up to do, not like, are pad days where you just go tap, 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 and you just go right in there. That being said, you do get a pretty thick application of color when you go with pens because the pen is kind of getting into those grooves. So you're getting a lot of ink in the grooves. Well, maybe not with this purple right here, this violet, because it's so... this is really dry. But if it's a pretty juicy one, you'll get a lot of coverage with one inking. Alright, see that kind of coming around? Just like I do these days, I kind of stay on the perimeter more with the darkest of colors. I don't know, I should buy some more Marvy colors. There's some really awesome ones out there. One of the my favorite blues that I've ever come across is manganese blue, the number 36. I'm not going to use it in here because it's not that color scheme, but that manganese blue, for me, is just my favorite blue, dye-based ink blue of all time. It's just so bright. I don't know if this one is. I might have diluted it or something with another blue, but it's just so bright. I think this one's watered down because it was dried out, so I diluted it with water. You know, I filled up the reservoir with water as opposed to more ink. But they didn't make manganese blue in pad form, so there's no re-inker for it. So I just have to buy another pen. I don't want to use pen to paper so much as I'd put, you know, this pen on a paper towel and I would, you know, apply it that way or on the stylus tool or something of that sort. Alright, look at that. Gosh, that is really intense. Those are your Marvy colors for you. That's what Marvy brand ink pads, okay, they're simply going to be the brightest colors. I don't always want bright everywhere though in a scene. Sometimes often I don't want things that intense anymore. Okay, that's just what we happened to end up with back in the day because that's, you know, we were just only using Marvy colors, so just we were getting some really bright, super saturated results, scenes, you know, and it was because Marvy. This will dry this way too. These Marvy inks just do not dry dull. I would still spray this though because it'll still protect it and it'll look really vibrant too. But they just don't dry dull. Okay, it's just they use a different binder in their inks than other manufacturers. So other manufacturers, when their inks dry, it's often dull. It's duller than what it looked like when it was wet. This tends to stay this way. I don't know, basically forever unless you expose it to light. Alright, this is kind of coming back to me. And what I'm seeing here, I wasn't expecting this. Kind of this level of intensity here. I mean, that is... That's definitely a different look than what you get with a paper towel, you know, and different brands of inks and whatnot. I mean, look at that. I don't know what you would call that. It's like this, I don't know, like a opening to a different dimension or something like that. Okay, now this is what I don't have. I don't have a black pen. But let me see if I can do this. I don't have the bright green that I used to do either, but in order to get a really strong dark color, I didn't like Marvy's black back then. In pen form, I like their black in terms of their ink pads, though. But this is what I used to do. Someone reminded me of this, I don't know, a couple years ago when I went back to the Carson show for the first time in a long time. But she goes, yeah, are you still doing that, like, purple and... oh, this one was dry here. She goes, are you still doing that purple and green or something like that for your black? And I was like, what? And I was like, oh yeah, it was the number 8 violet and number 25 bottle green. Okay, this is just way too dry. Let me re-ink this and just, I gotta make this point here. Let me pause the vid. Okay, luckily I didn't have to look for this long. This is my number 8 violet re-inker. Let me see if I can get this out of here. Okay. Going to the reservoir here. Well, that's on tight. Oh my gosh. I hardly ever re-ink anything with violet because, like I said, my darkest of tones, except for black, I don't use too much. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. It's all out of focus, but... Okay, so anyways, I'm just dropping this right into that reservoir. Okay, and I can kind of see it moistening that. It's not showing up on the video, I'm sure, but so that is like that, and the part that you re-inked, put that in towards the tip like that. Okay, so dropping it in towards the tip like that, but I'm not going to wait forever for that to by capillary action suck that up in there. So what I'll do is I'll just apply some of this ink re-inker fluid directly to the tip like this, just to get it going, and it absorbs it, and it'll be ready to go. And then, by the time I'm ready to use it the next time, that fluid that I re-inked the reservoir with will have connected up with the tip here, and it should be working just fine. All right. Okay, so what I was getting at here was, hopefully that's not way too juicy. That's good. All right, so what I used to do was I used to take this number 8 violet. This is the combination that I found worked really well. God, it's amazing we got through as many scenes as we did in my first class, Stampscaping 101. It was always a 3-hour class, though, but these days we would just ink this up right away with a pad, right? But you had to color it in like this. And then, back in those days, what we did was I had people ink it up with their violet. Now, this isn't the right green. This is going to be lighter than what I really need it to be. The bottle green is practically black. I think I have it in pad form, but I want to use the pens here just, because we're going back in time. All right. Okay, so kind of just running it around in here. Now this green, I do not want to have to re-ink this green for this video, but okay. So anyway, that's a physical blend of those two colors on here. I don't know if that did the job, but all right. Let's see, which way should we do it? We can do it this way, or we can do it this way. I don't know. Let's see. Let's go this way. It doesn't matter. Well, it kind of matters, because if I put it this way, then I might have to do a couple more impressions to each, the left and right side of it. I'm kind of pressing down on this a little bit longer, too, because, that pen was really dry, so there's not a lot of ink on here. In fact, with that green, I might have been absorbing some of the ink as opposed to transferring some of that ink over. Okay. So there you have that, right? It looks black, though, doesn't it? I mean, it looks completely black to me. Here in person, too. All right. A couple other applications. So violet and green, if you were in my workshops back in the day, and if you're still stamping, maybe put a comment down in the comment section and let me know if you remember doing this. When I went to my workshops, I had I took about, each person had 12 colors to work with. That's how many pens I gave people. So, and from those 12 colors, we were able to achieve a pretty wide spectrum of different colors and values. All right. It wasn't a huge range or anything like that. I mean, there's not. I would take a. Oops, this is brown. I would take a light medium blue, maybe a light medium green, light medium and dark brown. I think it was black for sure, or I don't know if I took black. No, I don't think I even did black. There was like yellow and pink in there too. But the one thing that we had a pretty good range of value, light to dark, okay? And then we had a good spectrum of colors, covering, the yellows, oranges, browns, greens, and let me see, blues. But what we didn't have with Marvy, we didn't have a range of intensity, because everything was intense like that. Those colors are really intense. All right, now, I don't remember if I had people do this, but after we get things stamped out like this, see how this is shaped like this? I can go into my rocks and color them in a little bit more if I wanted to. So let's say I took something like let me see, there's already brown on here. So, okay, so we'd have to clean off our tonal applicator right here. God, this is so weird using this. It's weird using this, but and it's the pens too. I've used this in demonstrations on this channel before, but I'm using pads, but not going back to the kind of this retro application of this with the pens. So I'm just really, I don't know, it's weird kind of seeing the results from this process right here. Okay, so on this one right here, let's try some pink on this. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of come into this from the outside like this, and I'll apply a little bit of tone over some of these rocks, okay? And do it this way as well. I'll hit some in the shadows. Alright, there's a little bit of too pinky color there, so let me go in with this orange. Okay. When I hit my shadows a little bit more, it just kind of anchors the scene, the rocks, into the scene a little bit more. Okay. I'm getting a little bit of smearing. I think that tree and Lakeside Cove is still a little wet, so it's getting a little bit darker than what I'd want. But that's all right. All right, dark brown here. I'm going to hit the shadows a little bit more down here. Okay. All right. So we have that. All right, now, back in the day, I thought I would use this. It doesn't really match up, but, in nature you see different types of trees, with other trees, different types of trees. But, let me see, let me go with a little bit of this one too, the spruce. Okay, so I'm going for something dark again, so, all right, this violet is really working now. I'm sure it kind of connected up with the reservoir. All right, so there's purple and green. Right. Come over here a little bit more. Let's go for a nice low one, maybe. This purple is kind of overpowering the green now because the purple is just so juicy and moist. So I'm not getting very much of the green showing. So these front impressions are a little bit more purplish in tinge. Okay. I mean, it looks okay, though. Okay, now I think I need to go for... Maybe I'll go with my little canoeist or something in there. Or let me get some birds or something. I'll go for some of those images that some of my first batch of images for Stampscapes. Okay. Okay, this was one of my favorite designs. I used it. Oh, I don't know. I used it in a really large percentage of scenes. It's the leafless limbs large. And it's nice and spindly. So you can see through it. It doesn't really cover up anything major, even if you use the whole thing, because it's just so airy. And I would use that all the time. I'll just use a little portion of it. Like that. Maybe I'll go for another. Well, let me try. Okay, I'm not going to be lazy here. I'll just go for I'll ink this up again. Let me go for another impression over here, just for a little bit of a textural change in the foreground. Okay, so it looks like something like this. It looks like clouds up there because of the textures that the tonal applicator gave. You know, it really picks up just the straight textures of the paper. You know, because we're not like smearing something on it, getting into all the crevices. You know, the tonal applicator's flat, so. Alright, so we have that. Let me give it some kind of focal point. Let me grab some birds or some ducks or something like that, or people for the surface of the water or in the sky or both. Okay, the early bird gets the worm. A couple fishermen out here, boating fishermen. I always thought they gave a scene kind of a certain type of mood. Okay, I'm going to blot off the edges a little bit from that tone so that it kind of blends in a little bit more gracefully with that kind of brighter area down there. All right. Oh my god, that's really purple. They might stamp out purple. Purple people. Oh, no, they look pretty black there to me. That really looks black though, doesn't it? Look at that. A little tinge of purple in some of this, but not too bad. But it works. I don't know. It still works, and I'm not using the bottle green. This is just the number 4. It's kind of like a Christmas green. Okay, so we have these little birds here. Ducks in formation. If you ever use ducks in formation, make sure you don't... There's very little surface area to this design. Okay? So, nice, light, even touch, okay? Don't, just barely touch it because you want to have them in there, but just light, even pressure. When you use big stamps, you're using a lot of pressure. You don't want to go like this and get that type of thing. You want them nice and crisp like this, okay? It's not, it's not precarious. Just don't smash it down there. Okay, so anyways, a real retro scene there done with stamps, all from my first release of stamps in the Stampscapes line going back to 1993. This one is the latter part of 1993 because that code for that one is 93B, so. But this one's like 027A, this one's 049, so I numbered all my stamps, from whenever they were made numerically, so. Tonal Applicator 084E. I know all these codes. I know them all up to a point that I ran out of internal memory in my brain to remember codes, but Marvy pens, glossy paper, and the Tonal Applicator. Going back in time, going back to my scenic stamping roots in terms of color usage. But interesting. Will I do it again? I don't know. Probably not. I think the paper towels give me a different type of look. But that being said, there is something to this kind of extreme glow and saturation here. I don't know. I might have to utilize that tonal applicator for certain types of coverages, maybe. And maybe the pens here, like that. This is that number 5 yellow here, especially that is juicy, provided a pretty nice foundation there for this other type of these other types of inks that came over it. That little glowing area back in here, okay, that what we see is the pink and magenta, but the thing that's really making it glow over there is this yellow that's underneath this whole area out here. So it's that intensity down there, that's from this. Okay, it's the base layers that are showing through all these transparent overlays that came over the top of it. Okay, I mean, the pink and oranges and reds and magentas, they are intense. Okay, but that warm glow that you have underneath that whole thing is really being, as a result of the base layers. Okay, especially if the base layers are really bright and I don't know, warm in this case. Okay, so anyways, yeah, thanks for sitting in with me and taking a ride down memory lane. In this case, in terms of an application of media, and not a flip through, kind of one of the old magazines. So anyways, fun stuff. Semi-surprising for me in a way with some of the results here. Definitely kind of a, I don't know, kind of an awakening in terms of my usage of this again. Kind of the first couple layers, it was kind of weird, but I don't know. After that, I don't know, maybe like the third color, I don't know, it felt like an old friend again. And, in terms, not just the stamp, I'm talking about the motion and tapping, that was used with that. So, interesting stuff to do something like this. And I said earlier when I was going through these magazines, I thought it would be kind of fun to do a retro style of a scene again. And I think I want to do that. I want to do something like with a pop-up or something like that with the stamps, and do some kind of real retro looking card, not just scene in the way that I was using it, but I don't know, maybe we'll do something with I don't know, we'll stamp something out, we'll use some glitter, pens maybe. Like I said, I don't have a lot of pens, but we'll do something with like pop-up dots or like a pop-up card or something like that maybe. Or I don't know, maybe we'll stamp an envelope. Who's stamped an envelope lately, in terms of mail art? Maybe we'll do something like that. Okay, so thanks again. Thanks for tuning into the channel. If any of this brings back any old memories of Marvy pens and such, drop me a note in the comments section. And do so as well if you have any questions. Okay, one little addition here. I was just going back to refile some of my magazines, and I came across this one right here. And this one was from 1995. It's an Australian-based stamping magazine. Sent to me by my previous distributor in Australia. And she had an article here that completely relates to the scene that we just did. Let me see if I can find it here. I'm not going to do a flip through of this one right here. But I don't know, we should maybe sometime. But let's see. Where was it? Okay. Seeking. Okay, here we go. Stampscapes, okay? And this is by Christine Lockwood of The Crafty Lady. And she had these different samples that she stamped out here. And what do we have right here? Here's the Tonal Applicator right down here. Okay. And here's the Lakeside Cove. And there's the leafless limb tree right here. So we just stamped out a Lakeside Cove scene here, you know. So it seems kind of interesting that I kind of came across this just by accident, I assure you. But here's a step-by-step type of process that she's done right here. She did this card right here. And this is how she did it. She stamped this out right here. And with the Tonal Applicator, brought in these different colors. She put a little bit of a kind of a glowing kind of sunset type of reflection down here. And then you go to this next page and, you know, she does it step by step here. So probably scanned each step of the way. And showed how to create it. So solo duck in here. Oh, she's used just portions of that. But then she put the leafless limb right down there at the base like that. But you can tell the Tonal Applicator, even in the this reproduction here for the magazine, you can see the dot pattern of the Tonal Applicator and how that's kind of created, right? See that kind of texturing down there, and you see it right down here. But anyways, yeah. Interesting seeing this article, and okay, and again, oh, Marvy pads were out at that time like that? Okay, well, they came out at some point in time, but here's the Marvy pens right here, okay? That were used a lot, so. Totally related, you know, pertinent when it comes to that retro stamping scene that I just did here, so. Christine, the Crafty Lady, and Stamping Papercraft Magazine.